The yellow-haired boy gets really scared after hearing his butler's voice. He asks Ellison what he should do now. Ellison replies, "What do you mean?" "Tell him it was nothing. You are the Lord's heir and a baron. They cannot refuse your order, so be confident." However, the yellow-haired boy says they've never listened to him before. Instead, they always ignored him. The butler is knocking on the door and says, "Young master, if you don't open the door, I'll open the door and come in." Rurin is listening to everything and thinking about how frustrating it is. She changes her voice to match the yellow-haired boy's and tells the butler it was nothing, so leave. She never ordered him to come in. The yellow-haired boy is really surprised hearing the same voice as his, but still, he thought they won't listen to his order. The butler stops knocking and says, "I understand, sir. Please call me if something happens." The yellow-haired boy is really surprised after seeing this. Ellison says, "See, I told you. You have to establish your superiority yourself." But in the next moment, the yellow-haired boy starts calling Ellison teacher and asks him to become his teacher. The yellow-haired boy starts thinking that his mother passed away giving birth to him. His father remarried shortly after, so he spent most of his time with his stepmother. She told him he can't do this, he can't do that. His stepmother was a strict person. She told him to be careful of how he acts since he was the Lord's son. Despite all of that, he still loved her since there were good times as well. However, everything changed when his father became bedridden due to an illness. She never looked at him or talked to him directly at dinners or celebrations. He wanted to become a good lord, just like his father, but the servants tried to control and restrict his movements under his stepmother's orders. He is really sad because there was no one to talk to, everyone was ignoring him. Since it was like this, he felt that he wouldn't be treated any better even if he inherited the title of a lord. But he says with a happy face and bright eyes that his thoughts changed after today's events, and he asks Ellison to please teach him more ways to become a good lord. Ellison, who is really confused, says that the conclusion's a bit weird, though. How does this lead to that? I'm just a restaurant owner. The yellow-haired boy replies, but this has never happened before. He would have still entered if he had told him to leave. Ellison thinks he's lacking a lot of confidence. It seems like he purposely suppressed his energetic and active personality. So he says to the yellow-haired boy, "Look into the other's eyes when talking to them. You said that you wanted to become a good lord. The lord's position comes with taking responsibility. Hence, you should be able to take responsibility for every word you say." Ellison also says that he is not saying you should ignore other people's words. Make sure you listen and think about the words before making a decision you truly believe in. If the decision is in your favor, then all is well. If not, then accept it and take responsibility. In Ellison's opinion, that's what makes a good lord. After saying this, Ellison opens the teleport door and says to the yellow-haired boy to eat the food before it gets cold and come visit the restaurant sometime. After saying this, he went to the gate. The yellow-haired boy says after Ellison left, he feels like he is dreaming, and without any other thought, he eats the hamburger. He gets really surprised. It's his first time eating something really delicious. Suddenly, he gets surprised and says, "I see. A good lord means someone who makes an effort to ensure that everyone can enjoy this kind of food. I understand, master. I understand the actual meaning." On the other side, Ellison and Rurin come back to the restaurant. Ellison says to Rurin that he hopes she doesn't take his words too seriously. Rurin asks if he means the yellow-haired boy, but she is really curious why did Ellison put so much effort into it. "You seem to care a lot." Ellison replies that he is doing as much as he is getting and gives Rurin a gold coin. After seeing this, Rurin says this is 100,000 runes. A regular hamburger sells for 200 runes and asks if he really gave this to Ellison in exchange for a hamburger. Ellison replies, "That's right. That's why we provided him with a service appropriate for the price. It's not a rip-off restaurant. This guy has hands as big as a dragon. He hopes he becomes a regular later on." Rurin is really angry, saying she doesn't like it because she has fewer hamburgers to eat. On the outskirts of Great City, there is a forest with an oddly popular clinic. The doctor there is definitely skilled and even learned healing magic, but that isn't the reason for its popularity. The biggest reason why customers flock to this place far from downtown is because this clinic is run by an elf, not a human. His name is Alina. She is healing the landlady after she made a little mistake while cooking. The doctor is really glad she arrived quickly. If left untreated, scars may have formed. The landlady gets amazed by his skills and says Alina's skills are the best. But after seeing Alina, the landlady asks her, "You don't look so good. What's the matter?" Alina replies that she is thinking about whether she should go back to her hometown now. The landlady gets really surprised and asks for the reason. So Alina explains that she loved healing and helping people. Despite everyone's opposition, she came out of town, but the reality was different from what she had imagined. No one is interested in treatment, and the people want to meet the elf woman at all costs, rather than her as a doctor. Not long ago, a person came to him and was furious, saying that she had seduced her husband. She knows that not all humans are like that, and it's not that she doesn't like healing people, but it's getting difficult to hold it in and keep going for him. After hearing this, the landlady is really sad. She asks Alina, by any chance, do you not like me too? Alina replies, no. And I like you, Mrs. Rain. Rather, you always treated me well. That's why I put up with this without prejudice. So the landlady thought if there were more things that Alina liked here, would she still stay? She also explains there are so many things she doesn't like about her husband either. His snoring. He is so naive. But there is something she likes more. She loves the fact that he is dependable, looks out only for himself, and does his best in everything he does. She asks Alina, you said that it still feels good to treat people, right? Alina replies, yes. The landlady is really happy and says if so, there is a restaurant on the side of the hill, so try eating there tonight. After hearing about the restaurant, Alina is really curious. The landlady replies that the number of reasons for liking this place can keep increasing one by one. And Elle's restaurant can be that kind of place. On the other side, Ellison is digging a cave for Rurin. Mr. Knoll asks Ellison what he is doing here, as he was going to the restaurant. Ellison replies that he was about to go too, it was under construction for a while. He asks about the person standing behind Mr. Knoll. Mr. Knoll introduces him as Nellen, and he is Mr. Knoll's nephew. He said that he had something to discuss, so Mr. Knoll wanted to listen while eating some wuba meat. He asks if there is no one at the restaurant right now. Ellison replies no and says Rurin should be there. He asks Mr. Knoll what's the matter. Mr. Knoll says that there is a clinic run by an elf, and Rain recommended the restaurant to the doctor there. He thinks they should be there by now. Ellison says, ah, is that so? He'll have to head back then. He asks Mr. Knoll, let's go. Ellison asks, usually, elves don't come out of their home forest at all. They must be popular, right? Mr. Knoll says to Ellison, don't even ask. He heard that all the guys in the neighborhood run there, even for a thorn pricking their finger. He also adds that seeing things like this makes him understand why elves hate humans. Ellison replies that there are elves who aren't like that and asks Mr. Knoll not to be prejudiced. But he admits that elves are a proud race. Before he says something more, he shows Alina, the elf, knocking down in front of Rurin, saying to Rurin, you are a great being. Please forgive my rudeness. Rurin says with an angry face, so you know you were rude. I'll forgive you if you live the rest of your life as my subordinate. Ellison is really angry at Rurin. After seeing Ellison, Rurin says she got herself an elf subordinate that she can use. But Ellison is really angry. He says to Rurin, what the hell are you doing to our customer? Before this accident happened, Rurin is sleeping at the table. Suddenly, she hears a voice, hello, is somebody there? She thought a guest had come. It's the elf girl Alina. She asks Rurin if this is the restaurant run by Mr. L. Rurin says yes and mentions that Mr. L is not here now. More importantly, Rurin comments on Alina being an elf. Alina replies affirmatively, stating that she is indeed an elf. After seeing her, Rurin replies, so it was true that elves are pretty. Alina compliments Rurin, saying she looks very pretty too, and she seems much younger than her. Rurin smiles and says, younger. Are you saying that I'm young? Rurin clarifies that she is young for her own species but should still be older than him. Alina doesn't understand and asks, what do you mean? Before Alina can ask anything else, Rurin releases his power, saying, how dare you run your mouth in front of me like that? Alina, after witnessing Rurin's power, kneels down in front of him and asks for forgiveness. This is the same exact movement when Ellison came to the restaurant with Mr. Knoll and his nephew. After some time later when everything's settled, Ellison opens the door and asks for forgiveness for all the commotion, inviting them to come in. After being hit by Ellison, Rurin is crying. But Alina can't believe her eyes and thinks, am I dreaming right now? She is definitely a dragon. Alina explains that it's common knowledge that everyone, from children to elders, knows about never annoy a dragon. They are walking natural disasters who can burn down whole villages if they feel like it. They are the strongest species, the pinnacle of all living beings. Alina grew up hearing legends about dragons to the point where she got tired of them. However, after seeing Ellison treating a dragon like a child, she wonders, just who is that guy? After giving Rurin a lesson, Ellison comes to Alina and asks for an apology on Rurin's behalf for what happened earlier. He didn't know something like this would happen while he was gone. But Alina asks Ellison if he is really a human. Ellison doesn't understand what she means, so he replies yes and says he is human. Ellison thought he somewhat expected it, but Rurin didn't even try to hide her dragon's aura. He also explains that the girl, is a dragon, as Alina already knows. He knows it seems weird that he is staying with a dragon, but it's complicated to explain. So he asks Alina if she can keep it a secret from other people. Alina replies, oh of course. She has no intentions of disturbing a dragon's activities. She doesn't want to die yet. Ellison explains to Alina that she won't kill him. But Ellison knows that Roran left a really bad first impression on Alina, so Ellison changes the topic and asks, now that I think about it, are you the elf doctor Mrs. Rain recommended to come? Alina replies yes and introduces herself as Alina. Ellison thought she is the village doctor. If she tells about this incident, then his restaurant's reputation will be gone. They really messed up the first impression. Alina asks Ellison that she heard one can taste delicious foods here even if they're only made out of vegetables. Ellison replies, sure, that's possible, and asks how much she can tolerate. She replies, it's not because of ethical reasons. My body just can't digest meat, so anything is fine as long as I don't eat meat. Ellison thinks that anything except meat is okay and says okay. He asks her to wait for a moment, stating, I'll prepare something for you. He is thinking there are a lot of good dishes without meat, but he thinks the tomato pasta is one of the best. So he starts making tomato pasta, first adding chopped onion, garlic, and mushrooms to the frying pan with heated olive oil, and cooks. This way, the different flavors harmonize to create a savory smell. Next, he strains the cut tomatoes through a sieve and adds them to the pan. Season with salt, sugar, and other spices, and lower the heat while making sure the sauce doesn't get burned. While the sauce is losing moisture, cook the pasta by boiling it for 8 minutes. Make sure to leave some of the pasta water. Finally, mix the pasta with the sauce and adjust the viscosity of the sauce with the pasta water. The tomato pasta is complete. Ellison serves the tomato pasta to elf girl Alina. She is surprised seeing Ellison's dish. Ellison explains, please eat this using a fork. I didn't use meat at all, so you don't have to worry. Alina is surprised after seeing the pretty color of the dish and starts eating. While she's eating, Ellison starts serving Mr. Knoll, saying, Mr. Knoll, you've waited for a while now, right? Mr. Knoll replies, yeah, I nearly fell asleep while waiting. He tells his nephew, try this quickly, Nellen. I'm telling you, it tastes amazing. Ellison thinks that Mr. Knoll's nephew doesn't look that happy. Maybe he doesn't like the dish. So he thought, then what about Miss Alina? But when he turns his head to Miss Alina, he gets really surprised. She is eating his food like she can't get enough, and she's only been eating raw vegetables until now. She never knew there was something so delicious. After finishing, she says loudly, this is the best food I've ever eaten in my life. But she suddenly realizes that Ellison is also standing there. Ellison says to her, it seems like the pasta suited your taste. She apologizes to Ellison for her behavior and says that the dish was so good that she forgot about manners. Ellison gives her a handkerchief and says, don't worry about it. It's good to hear you liked it. He asks if she doesn't go to other restaurants frequently, and she replies, yeah. I attract too much attention in the city, so I tend to eat vegetables that I buy at small markets. It's not like I never thought about eating a proper meal at a restaurant, but there aren't many menus that have vegetarian options on them. And even if there were, the dishes wouldn't taste that different from raw vegetables. So I thought, is there a need for cooking? Ellison thinks, well, it's true, because the people here don't use that many spices. Since they are rare and expensive, Alina says with a really big smile that she changed her mind after she came here. The food was really delicious. She has to thank Mrs. Rain for recommending this place to her. Ellison gets relieved after hearing this. He doesn't have to worry anymore about his restaurant's reputation. But suddenly, he hears a loud voice coming from Mr. Knoll's table. He asks his nephew, what did you just say? He replies that he just found out that his mother is not his real mother. On the other side, in front of the mining cave, an old woman comes to find her son Nellen. She is the mother of Mr. Knoll's nephew. She asks one of the miners if he has seen Nellen. He replies that he hasn't seen him. The night shift team already went into the mine. The old lady gets really sad, thinking her son ate something before he went to work. She asks the worker if she can bring this to him and come back out. The worker gives her permission to go into the mine. The old lady goes into the mine to give her son some food. In another side, Ellison's restaurant, Mr. Knoll asks his nephew just whom did he hear that from. But he says that's not the important thing now. He was fooled for 20 years, so he can't concentrate on work. That's why he left the mine early. He can't go back home like this. Ellison and Alina also listen to their conversation. Mr. Knoll says, don't you know what Mrs. May went through to raise you? She worked day and night because she wanted to feed you well, even though your father passed away early while working as a mercenary. Don't you think it's amazing that she did so much despite you not being her child by birth? You are smart enough to understand that on your own. He starts crying and says he knows that, too, and he knows that it's all his fault. But he was so irritated and angry that this morning when his mother asked him not to forget to take her lunch, he replied, "I don't need it, woman," and suddenly Mr. Knoll gets really angry and grabs him. He says, "There are things you say and things you never say, you bastard." Ellison stands up on his table and says, "Oh no, I'll have to stop this from escalating." But before he says something, the landlady comes and asks Nellen something big happened. Hurry and go to the mine. The mine collapsed onto his mother. She's trapped inside now. After hearing this, he gets really shocked and asks the landlady, What did you just say?" Mr. Knoll asked his wife Rena, "What do you mean the mine collapsed? And what happened to Mrs. May?" She replied that she didn't know for sure, but apparently Mrs. May went inside to find Nellen and then, his words, Nellen stood up from his seat and started running out of the restaurant. The landlady and Mr. Knoll also said, "We've got to go to the mine as well." But when they started heading to the mine, Alina asked them if she could also come with them, explaining that if the mine collapsed, then surely there would be injured people. She will help them with her healing magic. Ellison also said he would go too. But the landlady asked Alina if she was okay with this because Alina is an elf, and people see him differently. Alina said she knew not all people are like that, but it's getting difficult for her to endure it. The landlady said, all right, she understands. She will take Alina to the mine. In another side, in front of the mine, people are badly injured, and many people are also trapped in the mine. Nellen comes to the mine and asks them to let him go in. But a man grabs Nellen and asks him to calm down, saying it's dangerous. It could collapse again. Ellison and Alina also come to the mine. Ellison says to Nellen, please calm down. We'll head inside and save Mr. Nellen's mother. One of the men who stopped Nellen from going into the mine comes forward and says to Ellison, hey, listen. You can't go in either. We can't predict when it'll collapse again. It's an emergency situation. Ellison explains that the lady standing at my side, she is a doctor who has been taught healing magic. There are probably a lot of people inside who can't move and need to be treated right away. Every minute counts. Ellison asks them to let them go to the mine, but the old man is really frustrated. He doesn't have any choice, so he gives them permission to go. Alina thanks Ellison for helping him out, but Ellison says he didn't have to follow him in. It's too dangerous. Some time later, they reach the first floor of the mine, but suddenly some stones start falling from the ceiling. Luckily, Ellison saves Alina with his magic shield and says to Alina, as you can see, I know my way around magic. I'll stop any falling rocks for you. Alina gets really surprised and says, so you are a mage. Ellison explains that he was quite successful when he was younger. However, he is retired now, but he is more curious about why Alina decided to come here. He heard Alina owns a clinic in Drake City. He also adds that he is telling him this because one of his comrades used to be an elf, too. He also says that he doesn't think she's running that clinic just because she's an elf, and there were probably times when humans behaved rudely to him. Yet, she decided to enter a collapsing mine to save people. Is there any special reason for him to do so? But Alina doesn't reply. She doesn't have any words to say because she knows everything Ellison says is right. Before she says something, Ellison notices the road is forked, and they don't have enough time to search both of them. So Ellison uses his spirit's magic to track the people. Alina is really surprised. She asks Ellison if he can even control spirits. Ellison replies, yes, and says they'll tell us if there are any survivors. After a moment, one of the spirits finds one of the survivors. An old man is injured. After seeing a glowing light, he asks, what is this? Thinking that he must be nearing his end, he starts hallucinating. But the next moment, Ellison and Alina come to help him. Alina asks him if he is all right. Can you move? The old man is really surprised. He asks Ellison and Alina if they are the rescue team, explaining that he hurt his leg when the mine collapsed. After hearing this, Alina starts using his healing magic. Fortunately, it's not a serious injury, and says to him, you can head out after a first aid treatment. The old man thanks Alina for helping him. In another side, Ellison notices that his sprite, they found someone over there, too. Alina and Ellison saved many people using Alina's healing magic, and Ellison sent them out of the mine using his magic. Sometime later, they reached the last floor. However, Alina was getting tired after using his magic continuously. Ellison asked her if she could keep going, and she replied, yes. Ellison thought if Mr. Nellen's mother isn't here. But before he could say something more, he noticed an old lady lying on the ground. This old lady is Mr. Nellen's mother. Ellison asked Alina, how is she? Alina replied that she's in a bad state. I'll use a stronger recovery spell on her, but I can't guarantee its results. So she started using his strongest healing magic. Outside the mine door, people stabilized a temporary evacuation shelter so they could treat injured people. The landlady asked Mr. Knoll, what do we do? Mr. Knoll explained that Ms. Alina said the spell worked, so don't worry too much. She just has to wake up. Luckily, Alina saved the old lady's life. Mr. Nellen was crying after seeing his mother's condition, but Ellison explained there is no need to worry. Ms. Alina treated her quickly, using a stronger spell, so she's past a critical state. Alina, who was looking really weak, explained that she received a heavy blow to her head, but the treatment was a success. The injury near her eye isn't serious, so she will be able to live normally once the bandages are removed. Suddenly, Mr. Nellen saw the food basket that his mother prepared in the morning. He thought about his mother asking him not to forget to take her lunch, but he said he didn't need it, thinking that this is his fault because of him. His mother came to the mine and got hurt. Suddenly, his mother woke up and asked if he is Nellen. Hearing Mrs. May's voice, everyone got really happy. Mr. Nellen started crying after hearing his mother's voice. He said, I'm here. Mom, your son is here. His mother asked him if he didn't get hurt. He replied, of course not, I'm fine. I was so scared. What if the words I spoke to you this morning had become my last words to you? After hearing his son's words, his mother also started crying. She said, you're calling me mom again. I'm sorry I worried you. It's still a relief, though. It's a relief that you are not inside the mine. After seeing this, Miss Alina was really surprised. She said to Ellison, it's just as you said. Actually, I wanted to close the clinic and return to my hometown. I was disappointed in humans after experiencing a lot of terrible things here. That's when Mrs. Rain told me this, try increasing the number of things you enjoy here. Perhaps I hurried over to find those things. The lives of humans are much shorter compared to an elf's, but they express their emotions freely. That's why people get easily disappointed and heartbroken. She was one of them. But, ironically, that's also the reason she set up the clinic. She thinks there are too many things she cherishes here that she can't just leave. She likes the honest emotions of humans. And now she also knows how delicious the food is here. Today, she realized many things. Suddenly, she got exhausted, but luckily, Ellison caught her before she fell to the ground. She asked for forgiveness to Ellison. Ellison said to her, it seems like you exhausted yourself, and asked her to excuse him for a second. He transferred some of his mana to her. Alina was really surprised after seeing this. She questioned if this is the elf's mana transfer spell and asked where he learned this. Ellison explained that his elf friend he mentioned earlier taught him this spell. His name is Beden. Alina got really shocked after hearing Beden's name. She explained that Beden is the hero of the elves and asked Ellison how he knows him. Ellison replied that, I already told you earlier. I used to be a famous mage. Meanwhile, on the hill beneath the restaurant, Rurin was complaining about Ellison and saying, that scoundrel, he always leaves me out. How can he tell me to go and dig just because I can't use magic in front of other people? That's not fair. She was just trying to get a subordinate to help with the restaurant. But accidentally, she found out a natural hot spring.